Okay, guys, what's going on? I tell you what, I've got a few books that I pulled out because I love you guys. That's all there is to it, right? And this was a requested video by 2 or 3 people. And I'm probably going to be on the road for work for the next couple days. And it sounds like I may be in for a busy weekend. So I figured I'd get one more little live stream in, show some books for the people popping in. I just now said that this was actually a recommended video by 2, 3 people. Hey, Rob Ripa, what's going on? All right, we got the usual suspects popping up here already to jump in here and stuff, right? So basically, where I've just moved. Hey, Dr. Silver Age, glad you're there. Eric Breen, all right. World Series live stream. I saw that. I had some sort of my phone went off today telling me I could watch the World Series live on YouTube. I didn't really check it out. But what I've got here is I love you guys. I love you guys, like I was saying. But where I just moved a couple weeks ago, I still have a comic book room where I have my long boxes are up, but I need some more shelves. My shelves didn't survive the move. They were 9 years old. I'm not really surprised. So I didn't really get to dig the way that I wanted to, but I still was able to go up on a few shelves that I do have up, a few boxes I am able to get to, because this comic book room, as soon as I get it set up, that's where these live streams will come from. But it's impossible to find shelves. I don't understand what's going on. Impossible, you know. So, but anyway, I still was able to pull out, draw a few books out and stuff. I have a lot of comics that I consider good reading. Even though they're not real popular, some of these, 1 or 2, 3 of these books may be worth a little bit of something, who knows. But I wanted to sit here and just kind of do some recommended reading. I was asked to do this. Now that I've sounded like a broke record, you know, the last 2 days of work really surprised me. I had a good Friday last week. That was very calm, very quiet. And then I paid for it yesterday and today, and I'll be on the road the next 2 days for work. So let's get this out there, because sometimes you just kind of got to let work go. I have work here that I'm supposed to do that I brought from the office. But let's talk about comic books. Let's forget about life for a little bit. Let's just chill, okay? And I'm going to show some books that I think are satisfying reads. Don't pay a lot for these. If you do see something you want, sample it, find it at a dollar box, whatever, and go from there. And some of these books, it's really amazed me how long it's been since I've read some of these. I really have my go-to series in books that I read and reread, and didn't realize I was kind of caught. I was sort of stuck. You know, I myself have not. I need to re-explore my collection and go back and reread a few things, right? Now, a lot of people out there are going to recognize this. Hey, Paulo, what's up? I'm glad you're here. But some people are going to recognize this. I can't remember who this is the first appearance of. But this was a 2-part fun series, right? It came through Crusade Comics by the dude that does She, and it was also through Top Cow Comics, right? And it's full of a ton of indie creations and creators and stuff, right? It's called The Battle for Independence, and it was a 2-part story. One was, like I said, done by Top Cow, and here can I say and even more. But these were just so much fun to read. The main characters were Witchblade from Cyberforce or whatever it was back in the day, and She. And as they go on their little adventure, they run across Witchblade. Maybe this is the first appearance of Witchblade, I don't know. But as they go through this little adventure, they run across all these indie characters. As the story goes on, we have their little fights going on and everything. The story starts to expand, and basically what this was saying is that they can beat the machine. The stories don't connect per se because they have 2 very different feels to them. Okay, it's not like a part 1 and a part 2, but they still both go together. And the second story that's done by Crusade Comics, this is very symbolic. There's a big wall they can't break, and all these independents come up there, and they're up against the machine. Cerebus comes out, and of course is the big guy. and they're sort of like, we're all not as tough as you are to survive the wasteland that is the independent comic scene. And they're up against the corporation, a corporation basically, which is, Marvel and DC and the big guys. And it's just chocked full of these independent characters. And there is a guide in the back. I just love how the story builds and builds and builds, and how they're fighting the wall and they're fighting the big monster, that is, in the 90s, there's a big push for independent books after Image started. And even Joe Quesada had a hand in this, so, but they got permission. Terry Moore, we get 2-page spreads. And to me, this is one of those books that if I was just starting out in comics and I really wanted to know which way to go and what way to explore, I would grab something like this, because you can look at all these characters and be like, what is this? Who is that? Astro City is in here, Sovereign 7, Scud the Disposable Assassin. Just some great stuff. Yeah, Usagi Yojimbo is in there. Milk and Cheese. Like I said, Joe Quesada ended up getting in there with his 90s creations. Ash, and I can't remember who the other dude was. But Madman pops up, Hellboy pops up. This is just fantastic. I wasn't this excited to read a book until, since Crisis on Infinite Earths with all these characters popping up. Then you have a guide in the back of who all these characters were. Now, this is the sort of thing that was just for fun. And Bone pops up in here, and Bone ends up being a little bit of a hero, right when the heroes think that they can't beat the great big huge corporation, gigantic monster and stuff. Bones sort of steps in and does something to show you what a little guy can really do, how much he can mess somebody up. Great stuff. What do we got here? Charlton 66, brother. I've got your two. Charlton 66 went to Baltimore Con, where I moved and work and all this stuff that's going on. I was not able to get up there to hang with him. And believe me, I felt the sting. But he has 2 videos up showing off his Baltimore Con haul, which I have ready to watch probably at the hotel while I'm out. So go check out his stuff. First Witchblade. That's right. Yes, I figured it out. Okay, Charlton 66, cool bud. I love cool book. I love Scud. Scud the Disposable Assassin was a really cool book back in the day. I was able to read where he got a werewolf's arm. It was just so fantastic. I could go on and rant a little bit about that book because I really haven't read it since like the early 2000s. Now, I'm actually showing you a series that was never finished, and it killed me. And I actually was able to get hold of Kurt Busiek on some message boards in the early 2000s, and didn't really get a straight answer. He just accept that it's not happening. It's not going to be completed. I don't know what happened or why. But Image was smart there finally. They started out with the artist, and then they started bringing in writers, starting with Todd McFarlane, bringing in Frank Miller, Dave Sim, Alan Moore, of course. And then people came in and played. Wildcats got Chris Claremont, and Jim Valentino brought in Kurt Busiek. And every time I say this, I want to say mount up, okay? But there's only 3 issues of this series called The Regulators. Mount up. 100 cool kid points to anybody that knows the old school hip hop that I'm talking about here, all right? But anyway, he took some. If you liked Thunderbolts, where it was the villain's point of view, or if you like comics where we see what the bad guys do, each issue took, I guess these were Jim Valentino's villains at Image in the early 90s from different books or something. Who knows? We're going way back now. Can't believe we're creeping up on 30 years since Image was started. But each issue takes one of the regulators, these bad guys on the teams, and we get to see their daily life. And the one that just fascinated me in particular was this one with arson in it. This is a guy whose body is constantly on fire. Now, he is a takeoff of a Batman villain, in my opinion. That's all I want to say. But imagine the Human Torch is always on. And we actually get to see how he eats, what kind of furniture could he have. It really slows things down. And it's the Marvel's formula a little bit, humanizes these characters. And I was so freaking Warren G. That's right. John Jones got it. Yeah. Regulators. This series I hated that it did not wasn't finished. I think it was just supposed to be a mini series anyway, but it's 3 really cool reads, satisfying old school comic reads from a different point of view. I thought it was very smart and very fun at the same time. Dr. Phosphorus, that's it, Eric Breen. I love throwing this out and you guys throwing it back at me. This is so cool.
Here's a result from search.
Okay. I saw a documentary on Amazon Prime of Chris Claremont's X-Men, and it had Chris Claremont and others talking about it. Very cool. I have Amazon Prime, so maybe I'll look for that. John Jones got the Regulators of Warren G. And one of the cool things that I loved, I think it was from the 1995 Movie Awards, and it is on YouTube. The Ramones got to sing a little melody of all the songs that were up from the soundtracks of movies. And the second song that the Ramones did in the melody was that Warren G song, and they nailed it. It was the best one out of there. Of course, you got to like the Ramones. Can't be any geek off the street. Got to be handy with the steel, if you know what I mean. Regulators. Rob Ripa. Yes. Oh, my God. Okay. That is hilarious, man. All right. Set these to the side. My phone's trying to do searches. The OK Google function has been acting really weird. Okay, now this one was totally inspired by my last stream, and it seems like I had one before that where people were bringing these up. And when I started digging through these, I realized I may not be the man to really talk about this because I didn't realize, but I don't think I have sat down and actually read this book since probably around 86 or probably more like 1987, which really surprised me. Growing up in the house, this was one of the books that was just in the house, just like Conan was. You know, the magazines, the comics, the pulp novels. This was never a pulp novel that I'm going to show you, but I just sort of took it for granted. I would just kind of read it, and it wasn't so much that I loved it. It's just that it was very familiar in the house, and it was a cool concept, and I knew what he was doing. But I've got 2 issues here I'm going to show you, but it's The Warlord by Mike Grell. This is the first issue special that I finally just went ahead and dipped on eBay and bought, and ended up finding out that this is actually more or less reprinted and reframed in an issue of Warlord, which I already had some of the early issues, maybe number 11 or 16 or something, but it retold the origin story. And Mike Grell did a very good job of building this world in this book. Warlord is all about Travis Morgan, who a lot of people started saying looked like Oliver Queen when he got his fancy facial hair there. But actually, it turns out that it was based on Mike Grell himself. Mike Grell was in the Air Force. Travis Morgan is flying a jet for the Air Force, and I can't remember if it was a malfunction or he was low on fuel or something, but he decided he was going to try to take a shortcut by traveling over the North Pole. Somehow ended up flying into a crevasse and ended up inside of the Earth. Yes, the hollow Earth theory before I think it had a name, if you will. But it's inspired by Edgar Rice Burroughs. He wakes up on this planet. There's inside the Earth. Turns out the Earth is hollow inside, and in the center is like a sun. So it's never dark there, and time passes really different. And I thought it was fantastic because Mike Grell, where he was in the Air Force and he had the chin fuzz here and the mustache, if you will, he kind of put himself in a comic. And this is just it's fantasy, a little bit of sci-fi. One of the things that stuck out with me is how much skin people show in this, the way they dress. And I started picturing this place being very humid. It's a constant jungle. When he goes to sleep for the first time, he actually sleeps so long. That's where the beard grew. And that's when he started figuring out that time is different than what we have. I've always sort of had it in my head that maybe he went to another dimension, but that's when I was reading as a kid. But this is just a fun book. Dinosaurs, very, like I said, very, it feels very Edgar Rice Burroughs-ish. He walks around with his feathered helmet, got the wings like Thor, carries his pistol, which I used to know what kind of pistol he had, old school pistol. Had a great cast of characters with that fantasy feel. Demos was the bad. They were running around fighting wizards. Had a lady that Shakira turned into a cat. There it is, 15, 16 years before I even knew who Shakira was or longer. She was already in the book. He ends up having a daughter grow up. And I think I would recommend the first, I'm going to say 50 issues because they had great backup features in them until, starting from like in the 30s, sporadically up and up to around 57 or 58, they had backup features. Jim Starlin came in with OMAC, Conquerors of the Barren Earth. I think ARAC popped up in this before he was a comic and stuff, right? So this was just a fun book in its own little world, didn't really know about continuity, and it lasted, we're going to say from 1977 to maybe 88. You can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm shooting from the hip here. But what I found out, the reason this sat around the house for quite a long time is that, and I'm going by memory here, but I found out years later that number 1 came out, and I think maybe 2 came out. So either between issue 1 and 2 or between 2 and 3, this book, it took like 8 months or something to get the next issue out. So I think that sort of killed my uncle and my stepdad if I was imagining things of having to wait that long, because like I said, this was it. Around 84, an issue came out, and I'm looking for it. It's a great cover. Mike Grell kept writing this, and then another artist would come on, and Mike Grell did some fantastic covers. But that's why I say I recommend probably the first 50 or 60 issues. But I remember around 83 or 84, an issue came out where Travis Morgan returned to the surface land, our Earth, and he became president. And there's this fantastic cover of Warlord in front of the American flag in front of a bunch of people, and he's president. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're going by memory. Like I said, it really surprised me that it's been over 30 years since I've read this series, even though it feels fresh in my mind at times, right? I can't believe that far. But here's a number 1 I have where the series actually got started. First issue special, and then the first issue. But fun book, fun book. The quality did go down over time, in my opinion. Oh, awesome. Ramones Rule, Charlton 66. Awesome to see Warlord. Plus, in 83, they had like these He-Man wannabe toys that I found at Kmart. You can go through some old comics and find the ads. But they had action figures of Hercules, ARAC, Warlord, and Demos. And Demos had this cool, I guess it was supposed to be a scepter or a magic wand, but it looked like a mace made out of this plastic. And it was very cool. I had those, and I put them with my He-Man and stuff, right? Okay. Eric Breen. Also, Mike Grell had been doing Green Arrow backup features for almost 2 years. He liked that book. Awesome. Loved the gun he had. 44 auto mag. I had the 44 in my head. I'm so glad I kept my mouth shut. Charlton 66, right on it with the firearms. That's right. Barren Earth was a favorite of mine. In the Brazilian editions, it ran as a backup to the new Teen Titans book. I don't think they did in America, which is why I think you said the Brazilian editions. Interesting. Awesome. Been enjoying some Wally Wood sci-fi stuff today. Some of his panels are so claustrophobic feeling. Wally Wood, when he could get his stuff in on time, I don't think I need to say how big of a genius his was. And when it comes to sci-fi books, the artist, I go Al Williamson, Wally Wood. That's my guys, right? The next book. I don't think I have read this series since 2005. It took me forever to find the last 2 issues, so I probably read those around 2012, I think. And again, usually I'm the guy that throws this out there, become the Howlerpedia back in the day, but I'm getting old, guys. I'm getting old. But this is a series that if you like old Johnny Quest-like books, if you like a World of Magic-like, and this predates, there's fantasy in this, and magic, and a film noir, and pirates. Boys adventure stuff is kind of what it feels like from the 40s. The stuff that inspired Johnny Quest. Johnny Quest, if you will, but a completely different thing. And if you like Paul Smith, guy who did X-Men with Claremont back in the day, he has an animation background history, so he can tell a great story. He understands movement, and he can capture that. And he did the Golden Age with James Robinson, who also wrote this. And these aren't in order, so I apologize. I also need to rebag them. But Homage Studios, around the same time, if I'm remembering right, I think this was around the same time that Astro City started, or maybe a little bit later. But we had Leave It to Chance, a little girl with her who ends up getting a pet dragon, but her father is sort of like a sorcerer supreme, which is like a sheriff in this town, if you will. And the tradition is they teach the sons the magic so they can keep passing on that lineage and stuff, right? The traditions. But Chance is a girl, so she goes out, she does her thing, and in the midst of this, one of the jobs is to get magical creatures and capture them and send them away. Going through my head, the streets are all cobblestone, or it's for some reason I read it reminded me of like Victorian London, go figure and stuff, right? But she ends up getting a dragon. It's a little girl and her dragon out going out and having adventures, and there's goblins in the city and trolls living under bridges and all kinds of magical creatures. Like I said, it feels like a boy's adventure, but it has, Chance as a girl and stuff, right? The only thing that ever killed me is Paul Smith drew really close to the same dragon that he gave Kitty Pryde. I kept seeing Lockheed when I read this, right? I think there's 13 issues of this, and like I said, I apologize, these aren't in order, but these were just fantastic. They just moved right along, and it is a time where it almost felt like it was a sales pitch for a cartoon at times, right? But I could see this on Saturday morning. It had it felt like it was inspired by Terry and the Pirates or something, maybe, going by memory. I don't want to hype it up too much and act like it's the greatest thing. There were parts in there where I felt like it sort of dragged here and there. I remember this issue well. I loved all the monsters going after her, right? That's her dad right there. That's not Doctor Strange at all. But like I said, just a fun book. I highly recommend getting it. The last couple of issues are hard to find, 3 and 4. And this is what killed me. It was around this time. There's some of those little goblins that live in the sewers and stuff. But at the time, around issue 4, around where I was living at, that's where the book dried up. You just didn't see it very well. Homage Comics a few years later let him finish it. As you can see, the dragon grew. I only read these once, and I don't really remember all that stuff, right? And they finally put out the last issue, number 13, and it's square bound and double sized. So it took this came out quite a few years after the series had ended, so they were able to do it. Now that is just a fun little book, a little gem out there that's forgotten, overlooked, but it was for really great quality. James Robinson's the guy that wrote Golden Age, Starman. He's wrote some very good stuff. I wanted to read Leave It to Chance, but never managed to buy the trade paperbacks. I think the story was never finished. I think that's what that number 13 is. I'll dig through it tonight while I'm doing laundry, getting ready for my trip the next 2 days. I love Johnny Quest, so I'll definitely have to check that out. Leave It to Chance. And like I said, anything I'm recommending, try to get online and get a sample of it, or find you a cheap copy, see if it's your cup of tea. I love it, Now this one, I couldn't find the box. The boxes are stacked up, my short boxes, if you will. But JSA, this started in 1999, and the guys that started it were James Robinson, David Goyer, an artist named Steven Sadowski, which I cannot believe this guy didn't go on to greater things after this, because he was heavily influenced by Paul Ryan and Neil Adams in my assumption there. And Michael Baer came on there, right? This is the first trade paperback. I had the entire run that started out. But around issue 6, Jeff Johns came on here, right? And this was the JSA proper book. Now, this was a freaking comic book about, it had an optimistic feel to it, right? It had the idea of lineage, you know what I mean, of tradition coming down. Brought back a lot of heroes in their second and third generations, paid respect to the Justice Society going all the way back to the 40s, and actually ended up having some time travel stories. This is also where Black Adam became a player. Jeff Johns kind of grabbed him and elevated him. We got the Stars and Stripes in there, and of course I had to get him because it had Starman popping up in it. But this was just a great book, and it had great villains into it, great characterization, and it was so great. Before this series started, they had a number of one-shots, I don't know, 6 or 7 of them. That was leading up to their return in a special. And in the special, the Golden Age Sandman died. He was in the Himalayas, just like his pulp roots, what they were going for in the 30s. He's an old man. He's up in the Himalayas. Some assassins are coming after him, and he refuses to give it up. So he jumps off the Himalayas, and that gets everything. Sand comes in, his sidekick, and Black Canary came in. It was just I can go on and on about this book, but one of my favorite issues is number 10. with Wildcat. Wildcat has a broken arm. The Justice Society headquarters is empty. He's in the tub naked, and a bunch of villains come in, and they're like raiding their headquarters, and he's stuck in the bathtub naked with a broke arm. But he's been a crime fighter for 60 years, right? And it just comes to show you how Wildcat, one of the most overlooked characters, they made it to where Batman was trained by Wildcat. Black Canary was also trained by Wildcat when it comes to boxing and things like that. But it shows what a crime fighter with 60 years experience comes in. And they even elevated him by, you find out he has 9 lives. You know what I mean? And they go into continuity and you know how many lives he has left. So I highly recommend this JSA run. I really do. I love it. I've got it in boxes on my own. Felt a little bad about Roy Thomas. I actually was at Heroes Con probably around 2002, and he was doing a panel, and he said there was choices being made with those characters he never would have made. So, but I love it. Actually, here's what the first issue looks like. Like I said, I have them all. I think I have two or three copies of issue number 1. I just loved it. My favorite book through the 2000s, easily. That was the one I was like, go get it. Now, this will make Charlton66 happy if he's out there. I don't know why this has a price tag. I reused a bag. But this was, I can't remember if it was a 2-issue miniseries, a 3-issue miniseries. I think there's 2 volumes of this. But Dan Barrington, who I love as a painter, this dude understands a palette when it comes to his painting that makes it feel like pulp covers from the freaking 60s, I guess, early 60s or whatever, right? He's done some great covers in the past, but Howard Chaykin came on, and we got Thrill Killers. Now, this has a pulp film noir beatnik feel of like 1961, 1962 or something. God, it's been a while since I read this, at least 3 or 4 years and stuff, right? And this is a trade. I do have the individual issues packed up. And basically, this is the adventures of Batgirl and Robin, if you will, more than Batman. I'm not going to spoil the story there for you. But Robin is more or less like a beatnik and kind of stupid. You can almost feel the Rat Pack walking through here. I mean, it's just fantastic. Howard Chaykin did a great job doing a period piece is what I'm trying to get through, man. It feels like here we go. The year is 1961, a time of transition between the 50s, the decade of Ike McCarthyism and Jack Kerouac, and the dawn of sexual revolution, the Vietnam War, and turning on, tuning in, and dropping out. Like the rest of the USA, Gotham City is filled with giddy optimism, and no one can guess at the dark days that lay ahead, especially her 2 masked defenders, Batgirl and Robin. For them, the joyride was about to end, and the last stop was death. Now, I'm going to tell you what I found real interesting is I felt like that Robin, with the old Howler Mouse Van Dyke, if you will, goatee there, back in the day when I had those, if you guys have watched me for a while, but he's not as smart as the regular Robin is and stuff, right? And Batgirl really, to me, becomes a bit of a manipulator in it. Just great stuff. I mean, I can almost feel the Rat Pack getting ready to enter. That's probably the only thing that was missing and stuff, right? But I love those Thrill Killer books. And like I said, I don't really recommend a lot of Howard Chaykin. He's done 3 or 4 things I absolutely love, and that's one of them. The other one is Twilight, which I should have brought that out. Okay, where we at? Oh, you guys liked the JSA. Whoa, I got way behind here. Okay, I had the whole run, but sold it. I'm a big Hour Man fan. Okay, Dr. Silver Age loved the series. Gretzky. Paul Costo, that JSA was just the best. It had the character development that the JLA lacked, and what they did with Cobra and Black Adam was just amazing. Yes. Absolutely. I've been a Black Adam fan since 1980. I have a VHS tape of the Shazam family cartoons that played on Heroes High here in America around 1980-81 by Filmation, and that's where I found Black Adam. And he's been one of my favorites ever since then. So when I saw him pop into the JSA and Jeff Johns started doing things with him, it was so surreal. It was so surreal. They also made new generation characters like Damage, now Atom Smasher and Jakeem Thunder. Very interesting. Yeah, they had Damage, and they also had Nuclon, who both were, I don't know, sort of, they referred to them as sort of like stepkids of the original Adam, Al Pratt, I think, right? And I loved how when anybody would blow up and get into fights and do damage and hit and sock and use their fist and lose their temper, there was a panel somewhere where somebody in the JSA were like, why is it always Al's kids that do this? I think it's just fantastic, the way they looked at those characters and the way they just moved things along. I also liked in the JSA how they didn't change anything in history, in the DC continuity. They just sort of started connecting the dots. They have a story where they go back in time to ancient Egypt, and there's a Metamorpho there. There's a Black Eye Adam there. There's the original Dr. Fate there. They a lot was going on in Egypt, and they put it all together. Just one story after the other was just great. I also liked the new Mr. Terrific. This book made Mr. Terrific, in my opinion. A friend of mine had Thrill Killer. It's been a while since I've read it. Me too, Paulo. Eric Breen, I just got issue 1 of Thrill Killer. I really want the rest of the series. I love them. I absolutely love them. I had to track them down. I was compelled. Just popped in, but that Thrill Killer certainly sounds interesting. Kid Ragnarok. All right. Adrian T. Oh, we got a new guy, new person. A new person, Adrian T. 2009. I like Dan's own character books. I can't think what the Nocturnals. I think they might be referring to Nocturnals. Now this one is kind of obvious. Now the thing about it is I'm just excited as some of these books as the day that I heard they were coming out and I picked them up. So sometimes when I get things, I'm not sure what people remember, if they heard about it. To me, this seems like yesterday, but I can remember where I was living. I don't know what year this was. I'll look it up later. We'll take it out of the bag because it's been in the same bag since day one. Yeah, year 2000. We got JLA one-shot hardback. Grant Morrison had been on the Justice League for a while, okay? And I think one of the things fans wanted to see Grant Morrison tackle was the return of Earth 3's crime syndicate. And he made it to where it was JLA Earth 2. Okay, just kind of ignore that. It's called Earth 2. This one-shot hardback by Frank Quitely. They reprinted this several times, soft cover and everything. And this is just a fantastic story. And actually, I can tell when I read it, I didn't put the slip cover, the dust cover back on properly. It's upside down inside. But we get the introduction in the updated versions of Ultraman, Owlman, Superwoman. Now, since I was a kid, since 1982, and possibly a reprint in the 70s in Justice League number 111, maybe 113, Justice League of America 29 from the Silver Age. I think that's right. But I have been a fan. I've been a fan of the bad guys to begin with, but I'm the guy that didn't really want to see Justice League versus Avengers. I wanted to see the crime syndicate go up against the Squadron Supreme. Go figure. Just me. That's just how my mind worked when I was a kid and nowadays, right? But this is fantastic. We have Justice League go into Earth 2, where basically everything is turned around. It's not so much the law of physics, it's the morality in things. And of course, these guys rule that Earth, if you will. The airline is run by the KKK. Just all sorts of really weird things. And I don't want to spoil it, but they have some great designs. It's been so great to see these designs last all the way up until we got a straight to DVD Justice League cartoon where we got to see this world, if you will. Just fantastic stuff, right? And they teased us a little bit. The continuity stayed, whatever happened on Earth 1 happened on Earth 2. So when Guy Gardner became Green Lantern, they got a new power ring. When Wally West became the Flash, I think they got a new Johnny Quick. But these guys all have dark turns. And they teased us here with an evil Aquaman and an even Martian Manhunter. Because for years we just saw, I think, like 5 of them or something, right? So to me, this is a classic book, one of Grant Morrison's best work. Frank Quitely hitting the scene. To me, Frank Quitely draws like Frank Miller out of the shadows. He is Frank Miller in the sun, if you will, and he has progressed and evolved so far past that since 2000. I mean, just fantastic stuff, man. Oh, there we go. Yes, Nocturnals. Couldn't recall the name. Also, he did one about Kaiju Fighter. I had Dan Barrington backing up for a minute on Facebook, and I actually got to talk to him a little bit about the Nocturnals because I posted a picture when I got a trade of the Nocturnals. I said, finally. And he wanted to know why it was so hard for me to find. So we had a little talk about that. Comic Core, JLA Earth 2 was awesome. Yes, it's a classic. It doesn't need to be touched. It needs to go back. And to me, the Crime Syndicate, that is one of the best revamps, if you will, ever. It's solid. They're classic. They don't need to touch it. I also got the Kurt Busiek story that they did with the Crime Syndicate and the Justice League series after Morrison had left, after Wade had left, after Joe Kelly had left. And it was supposed to have been a mini series, but they just stuck it in there with the Justice League books. It was all right. Ron Garney did the art. Animated movie wasn't bad either. No, I love the animated movie, especially when the Marvel family showed up. They called them something else in there. Oh, that was so good. They nailed that Justice League cartoon. Crime Syndicate versus Squadron Supreme. Well, there's a comic I know I wanted. That's what I do, Kid Ragnarok. Every now and then. That has been a vision of mine since 82, 83, 84, since I was a kid. I know it was before I went into middle school. The redesigns are great. The original Crime Syndicate, Owlman and Johnny Quick, look terribly outdated. And that's just it. This didn't feel forced. This was very organic. If you were reading the comics, you kind of caught how, like I said, the continuity of the history sort of paralleled each other. I mean, it was just so well done and simple. The Shazams in Earth 2 was a great take. It was. They were absolutely fantastic how they did the Shazams in that cartoon. Oh, okay, all right. Apparently with the JSA book, I pulled this out with it, but we'll go ahead and show this. Virtue and Vice hardback. I have no idea if this had a dust cover back in the day. I think I found this at a flea market, which was fantastic when I found it and cheap. But this went back to what people were wanting were their JLA GSA crossover. Every year for years, they had the JLA and JSA crossover and meet. So they finally did this one, and this is during Thanksgiving. And they also play with the Shazam family. The 7 deadly sins escape, and each one possess members of the Justice League and the JSA. I kind of laughed because I think Lust of the Deadly 7 Sins possess Power Girl, I think, right? Okay, Paulo Costo. All right, I think he's going to know exactly what I'm talking about here. Give me just a minute to adjust. But a very interesting story with this before I show you this, right? I've shown this before. Okay, this is Tardy. All right, here's the guy's name, right? I worked with a lady, and I'm still working with her, even after I left the job I had in 2009, traveled, got other jobs, and came back to the area and worked with her. She's still there, but it had to be the early 2000s. Her husband, family at the time lived in England, so they went to visit them in England, went to France, and she knew I was into comics. And she was looking for, a little gift for me and was going to give me a comic. Well, what she found in France is that she couldn't find the comics, but all of a sudden she found a store or something where it was a bunch of men in business suits and very nice, long black jackets, if you will, is how she described them and stuff. But it was businessmen sitting there reading these books, the graphic novels. So I got a French version of Tardy here, right? And for years, I would just look at this. The thing I've always said about comics is that you can tell a great book or a great artist by the fact that you can follow the story without reading the words. Well, here I am with a book in French. I do not know French, but I just went over these pages over and over, the cartoon style, the film noir, the dreams of the clown, the period piece. I could tell this was like at least the 50s or the 60s or something, I think. I don't know. Maybe the 40s. It's been a while since I did this. I knew he was a detective. I ended up making up my own story each time I read this, right? So, and during a live stream, somebody told me that they had Fantagraphics, maybe. Fantagraphics has started getting Tardy work and making their American versions of them. And of course, I jumped on eBay and I got the Fog over Talibiac Bridge. Oh my gosh, these are fantastic. Tardy. I'm a fan of I feel like the man who had a picture of a girl he never met, but he fell in love with the picture. Tardy, man. Yes, absolutely stuff. And I think it was on Amazon. There is a animated feature based on the work of Tardy. At least it was his artwork. I think it had blimps and stuff. I watched it years ago and was just blown away with it. I discovered Tardy, and then all of a sudden there's an animated feature that's on Netflix or something. Couldn't believe it. Here we go. Paulo Costa. I knew you were going to be all over that. Oh, yeah. Nestor Burma. Haven't seen one in a while, although I've never actually tried one. Okay. I assumed a little too much. The title's translation is a Let It Hangover. It's fantastic. Tardy was a regular guest for a while at the Amadora Comics Festival here in Portugal. Oh, fantastic. Never heard of Tardy, but love this kind of Euro comic books. Yes, and like I said, I'm always on the lookout to dabble in some European comics. I have several of them, and I always love them. It probably goes back to my childhood of reading heavy metal when they were bringing Mobius and those guys over in the first, 4 or 5 years of that book. Now, moving on here, there's a guy named Alan Davis. And Alan Davis has always been interesting to me because he popped up when I was about 11 or 12 on Batman the Outsiders. He went to the Batman books. And it was very odd because I loved the guys. I could tell this was a great artist. You get what I'm saying? I'm like, this guy's good. He had his own style. Everything was fluid. He showed emotion. And then I was like, why is he on Batman? His stuff felt like it should be out in the sun, not on a dark character. Then he jumped over to the X-Men and Marvel and stuff, and did a few one-shots here and there and everything like that. And as time went by, I started finding out that the guy worked with Alan Moore back in the early 80s on Captain Britain and things. And then all of a sudden, something happened in the late 90s, early 2000s. The Nail came out, a Justice League 2-issue miniseries, and then another Nail. And then he did a few things at Marvel, and it turns out this guy's a fantastic writer on top of an artist. And it's like everything gelled. I mean, I've watched this guy since 1985 maybe, and then all of a sudden he starts doing these mini, little mini series. He did Superboy and the Legion, a little 2-issue miniseries, but he went all out here with Fantastic Four: The End, and this thing was just fantastic. This actually feels like you could jump right back at the end of John Byrne's run, right? Go through a little time travel into the future, and it's the Fantastic Four in the future. 6 issues, fantastic stuff in here. He does. I mean, the man knew his Marvel. He knew his Marvel. I really wish that Marvel could have went this way with their books if they wanted to change things and go forward. This is one of those books I totally geek out on. I totally overhype, but it was just. I think I was needing something that felt like Marvel to me, the classic Marvel, and this did it. I ended up lucking up, and I can't remember what came first. I either found the first 6 issues and the 6 issues or whatever it was in a dollar bin, and then found this, and I bought this to read, or it was the other way around. But this is on my shelf. This is a regular pull off of my shelf, and I just absolutely love what they did. Fantastic Four: The End by Alan Davis. Yeah, highly recommend that one. What we got here? Hey, JLS Comics is here. Hello, Kid Ragnarok. I first saw Alan Davis on Excalibur as a child. Really liked his work. Loved Excalibur. First, 25 issues, classic. And then he came back, and Alan Davis was writing and drawing that early 40s up until like issue 60 or something. I don't know. I started reading those, and I never got to finish them. Life just got in the way, but I loved what I was seeing. Here's the thing, and we got Paulo here. The thing for me, I've always preferred American comics over European ones, but European comics are impossible to ignore, and I try to be familiar with something even if I haven't read it. To me, any great collection, and the great thing about the hobby of collecting is the variety that's out there. Sometimes you just got to take a chance. Sometimes you just sort of, you do have to dig a little bit. So to me, I mean, if I could get a comic from anywhere around the world, as long as I could, read it, I'm wanting to take a chance. Tardy is the kind of artist in work that I wished I could do. You know what I mean? Tardy is the one that is fantastic. Adrian T, 2009. I'll have to check out that fantastic book. I've never read it. Fantastic Four book. I've never read it. The last Fantastic Four I read was Hickman's Run. I know people that like it. Okay. Paulo's here. Sleepy Reader's here. Nice. Okay. Now, this one, again, I've talked about this before. Some people who watch this channel may have heard me talk about this before, and maybe not. And it blows my mind how long ago I actually read this. This could be 7 or 8 years ago. I have no idea, right? Now, I'm a bit of a Hellboy fan, right? This is leading up to, let me tell you how I got there, right? A little bit of a Hellboy fan. I'm getting rid of certain issues for years. I'm going straight trades on them because Mike Mignola will get in there with the trades and add pages and panels to get the story to flow the way he wants. Mike Mignola has this thing where he will draw a whole page, and if he thinks it's crap, he will throw it out. So he works on them, right? Well, along the way, he ended up doing this one shot here with a book called Beast of Burden. It made sense why I never heard of Beast of Burden, because they have a very sporadic scheduling with their books. I mean, you just never know when one's going to come out and stuff, right? But Hellboy, being an investigator of the paranormal, ends up on the hill where all these animals, these dogs and stuff, it's almost like the little rascals, with their personalities, the cats, the dogs and stuff, where they're protectors of the hill from paranormal beasts. We're talking like witches and demons and devils. And it's perfect because you see these cute little animals who do have an innocence to them, fighting real evil. And I love the segue into this. They explain themselves to Hellboy. Hellboy is us, meeting these animals. And they're like, well, here's what we do. We protect the hill from supernatural beasts, and we talk. And Hellboy's just sitting there, and you can tell Hellboy has seen some crap because he goes, okay, got it. And he just moves on, and we get our story going, right? Well, that led to me to really starting to seek this out through Dark Horse. I could not believe I'd never seen this. And it's by Evan Dorkin. Evan Dorkin did a comic book back in the early 90s, maybe, writing of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures or whatever it was. He's basically been a comedy writer. He did the world's funniest one-shot where Batmite and Mr. Mixa's Pitalik were fighting, and through their magic and their fighting, they went through the multiverse, and we got extra pages by Frank Miller doing The Dark Knight Returns, extra pages of Kingdom Come, and all sorts of things. And then all of a sudden you find out that he's doing this with Jill Thompson. Now, he had a bit of a meltdown with Jill Thompson, I guess, because he got on Facebook or Twitter, and I kind of stopped following him because I've met Evan Dorkin. I have some of this stuff signed. And apparently Jill Thompson just won't get with him to put this book out on a regular basis. She has other projects, and he was talking about how, he was, scraping by and, can't be professional. So I think Beast of Burden has been coming. I think she might be co-owner of the book. But anyway, there's some drama there. And so I think he's been putting out Beast of Burden a little bit more regular with different people and stuff, right? Now, I actually love this story here. It's a one-shot, What the Cat Dragged In. Basically, this is a witch's familiar, and their whole job is to just take out evil magical creatures and stuff, and they let her in. I guess they're trying to get some retribution of her, or let her find her goodness or something. Very interesting take. Very evil stuff that pops up against these guys. I love this book. And right here, I think it's the beginning, reprints a bunch of the earlier stories and stuff, kind of catches you up. Beast of Burden, Animal Rights. I was so happy to get this a couple years ago when it came out. Did he sign this? Yeah. Here's where I met Evan Dorkin, and he signed it right here. Even drew me a little cat. Great guy. I like meeting him at the con. He was a lot of fun. So what do we got here? The pure comic book storytelling right there. Dorkin is very eclectic. He also does underground indie style books. He draws himself. Yes, Sleepy Reader. Yes. I remember talking to him and Scott Shaw the same day, and I was like, those two guys were the best conversations I had all day long. I think it was the same day I met Jay Lee and a few other people, and I was kind of let down. Oh my goodness, was it Charleston 66 or Comic Hoarder that sent me this? But I've always been wanting to know about this character. I didn't even hear about this. I don't want to say I didn't hear about this character, but I definitely did not read anything about this character for a while. But if you like Watchmen don't like watching whatever, and there's Rorschach and stuff. A lot of people go straight to Rorschach saying that it's the Question because it was based on the Charlton Hero, which is true. But he got a lot of his philosophy from Steve Ditko's other creation. That was, I guess, an indie book before there was a name for indie, alternative and stuff. But this reprints, I think, some of his late 60s adventures, early 70s of Mr. A. I have never had a book by Steve Ditko that he writes and draws that reflects his own philosophy in life, that there is right and wrong, black and white, one card, that simple, black and white. And this is Mr. A in his armored white, outfit suit there. He went from the Question to Mr. A, which I always read as Mr. Answer. I don't know. But this book infuriates me, but I keep reading it. It was brutal for the time. It was brutal at the time. And I think he returned to Mr. A quite a bit, putting out books on his own, especially the last few years before his death and stuff, right? So when I got this, I immediately got on the phone. God, who sent this to me? I'm apologizing to both guys. But I immediately, next time we were on the phone, that was the first thing I spoke about. The hypocrisy of some of the stuff in here makes for great reading, but also something you can sit and discuss with friends, getting a bit philosophical. There's a whole thing with Steve Ditko where there's a certain book that you can actually probably find that he adapted this right and wrong influence. There's no in between. There's no grays in life, right? And that's what inspired the Mask of Rorschach, if you will, with Alan Moore. Trying to think who it was. Somebody got asked about, have they ever heard of Rorschach? They went, oh, you mean Mr. A, but that guy's crazy. That gives you an idea there. What we got here? Oh, my freaking goodness. Steve Ditko is my biggest artistic influence. I've always wanted a Mr. A book. It's worth tracking down. It really is. It's pure Ditko. Kid Ragnarok, I read about Mr. A, but have yet to read the book itself. It seems like an experience. Yeah, and again, it's simple strips. It's still simple Ditko stuff, man, but he doesn't waste a panel or anything in there, and it's very straightforward. That's probably one of the things that infuriated me. Kid Ragnarok, I have not read Mr. Paulo Costo, Steve Ditko, and Alan Moore are complete political opposites, but I think Mr. A is more appealing to Alan Moore's interest. It's pure Ditko and unfettered by editorial needs. Yes. Scott Neely is here. Did expect this tonight. Well, I'm going to be on the road for work, and it sounds like I want to have a busy weekend, so I figured let's get this out here. This was actually a requested video by several people. They just wanted some recommended reading, so he and his publishing partner did Kickstarters all the way up to his death, from what I've been told. Yeah. There's a great document. I don't know if I'd call it a documentary. I think it was a British show, but it was, help me out, guys, searching for Steve Ditko. And it ended up having Neil Gaiman and the person, Stephen Fry, maybe, hosted the show. And they ended up outside of the building that Steve Ditko had his studio. And Neil Gaiman and Steve Fry got to talk to him, but they would not say what happened up there. No worries. I was just on a Night Tigers live stream last night. Nice. Okay. And that documentary is on YouTube, Adrian is saying. Yeah, I got the title right. Nice. Okay, guys, we're really winding down here. Like I said, I just pulled some of the stuff off of my shelf because my short boxes and things are still stacked up. I've got a nice wireframe shelving that I made that holds about 25 of my long boxes, but I don't know where anything's at right now. And there's boxes all over the floor in what's going to be the comic book room. Now, this one here with me, this blows my mind because I cannot believe how long ago the movie came out to this. This was a comic book movie. I have it. I absolutely love it. And I'm the man that was so happy. I'd read very little of this book when it came out, okay? This has ties to Robert Crumb and things. This was a friend of Robert Crumb's. This was, the movie was fantastic. It was interesting. And it's real life has a lot of drama, but in the movie that they actually had my favorite strip by this guy about the telephone book, about finding his name in a telephone book. I highly recommend getting on YouTube and just watching that one scene. The whole movie isn't like that, but we actually get to see some of his comic strips, if you will, come to life on the screen. And the dude did a fantastic job with it, right? And I'm, of course, talking about American Splendor. This is a trade of the early books that came out sporadically since the 70s. Okay, this is one of the first alternative books. You can say Indian stuff, right? Harvey Pekar, the man who was on David Letterman, quite a character of himself, beat cancer, recorded it. Um, the movie presented in a way that his life really took off once he started this comic and things came in there, right? But American Splendor, the movie, is one. To me, that's one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. You just fall in love with the characters, and you actually get to see the real life people that Harvey Pekar put in his books. This is his wife, people, his friends and things they put on there. They make little cameos, I guess you can call that, in the movie, and kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit, which is what this book did. But this is just some fantastic work. I mean, I highly recommend this very trade if you can find it. If you can find this American Splendor trade, this is the one I would do. This. I have a few other things. Look, I still have it bookmarked, and stuff like that. This had to have come out around 2003, 2004, probably, I think, this trade. But it's just some great stuff, different artists in there. Checkout line, what hell it is. But my favorite one is the telephone book. He finds other Harvey Pekars in a telephone book in Cincinnati, and he thought he had a unique name. So it blew his mind that there could be other Harvey Pekars in the world, let alone in the same town. I had the same experience the first time we got a phone when I was a kid. I was about 6 or 7 years old. And I looked up, I wanted to see us in the phone book. It was exciting. We never had a phone before. And I get the first phone book comes in. I find this, but right underneath us, I find a couple of people who have the exact same name as my parents. And then as I started looking at the street address that was in the phone book, they lived next door to us in the trailer park. And it blew my mind. So to see that in a comic book that Harvey Pekar did, without my memory of that, whole other level of coolness that I don't think anybody can experience unless you're a kid and have the same one. What we got here? American Splendor, awesome pick. Thank you, Sleepy. Got to put the kids to bed. Glad I caught your live stream. Hey, thanks. Sub, thumbs up. Come on back. That's Surly Tim is here. All right. Surly Tim, Tim's Fun Bunker is here. He has that trade. Great book. Yeah, and Scott Neely had the same experience, apparently. Are you going to, okay? Now, this next one, to me, again, I don't know if I should have put it in here because these guys are part of pulp culture. And I often say it, and I don't regret it, and I sincerely mean it, that I grew up in a great time. I got to see the dawn of many of things, or at least be there after it started and saw the rise of it and stuff. But this one was out of left field when it started. You had to have been there. It sounded weird. It looked weird. And you couldn't believe that it was spreading around. It was a book that people would get and they just fell in love with these characters. And then my most surreal moment in the world was they are on Saturday morning cartoon all of a sudden. And Archie Comics was putting out their own version of this comic. And then I finally, in like 1991 or something, got to read the original stuff, right? And I couldn't believe this. And now I want people to go back to the beginning with these trades, if you can get them, and read the original stuff. I think these are must reads. It was so cool. It just amazed me that it had an atmosphere during that great indie, the black and white explosion of the 80s and stuff that kind of popped out and stuff. And enough of building up, but I'm talking about the original Eastman and Laird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles stuff, right? I probably started taking this book seriously, wanting to read it, when I saw it in Comic Scene or one of those magazines back then, the Comic News, and they had a panel in here. And it's right out of the first issue, but we have them fighting ninjas, and one of them hits our turtle. Might have been Michelangelo they hit. I'm not sure. They had the swords. And they turn around and they're like, "Oh my God, you bleed." And the turtle looks at him and goes, "Yes, I bleed." And he says, "And you bleed too." And I think he chops his head off. But they did it in storytelling while. This book is heavily influenced by Frank Miller, of course, and influenced by Jack Kirby, which is probably why when I finally gave it a chance, I fell in love with it. The art was different. There's nothing out there like this, and it had a lot of it had a lot of people doing their version of it, if you will. Adolescent hamsters, things like that. Black belt adolescent hamsters. Even the name Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I've ended up watching several documentaries. Well, we'll say maybe two, but I know there was one really good one that I was just fascinated with, the rise of the turtles and stuff. And they just permeated and became part of pop culture, and they don't even feel like a staple of the '80s anymore. They've survived a lot. These are great characters when they have survived some of the things that they have done to them. I mean, I put them right after with Batman, with being able to survive with such a great concept and Splendor and stuff. My favorite thing is I caught it real quick to also that they tied the ooze that made them into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They tied it in with Frank Miller. Well, not Frank Miller. They tied it in with Daredevil. The same ooze that blinded Matt Murdock and gave him his radar senses, the same ooze that made the Turtles. I mean, I was just like, that is fantastic. And they just got better and better. Of course, we have a Cerebus story here and stuff like that, but they really got better and better, and they were really doing some original things in there. This was its own book. That's what gets me. This was some world building there. So yeah, I'm saying go out and get some of the original Turtles stories from their first appearance on up, at least through the City at War story that I think started in the 50th issue or something like that. Eastman and Laird kind of returned. I think that was 12 or I think it was 13 issues and stuff. To me, that's all the Turtles you need. Even though those Archie comics where it was, kid friendly, they did some great stuff in there. There's some boundaries pushed in there. A lot of great characters, a lot of colorful stuff. I can look back on that stuff now, and comics were so good back then that it felt like all the comics had a certain quality that the cream has risen to the top as time has gone by. Wow. I think, okay, let me see here before I pop off here. Yes, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was awesome, but I didn't like the cartoon. I loved them in '85. Scott Neely. There you go. Like I said, I came on a few years later because you heard about them first. And I think the first issue had like 3,000 copies. I don't know if that's true or not. Peter David talked about the Turtles because he was traveling, stopped at a gas station. I mean, this is his story. I can probably find it somewhere, but he said that somebody gave him the first issue and it had a low print run, and he discovered the Teenage Mutant Turtles that way, and that's how he got the first issue. I have some of the original comics. I had them up to about 3 or 4 years ago. I had issue 3 and 4, I think. Used to have those, but lent them out and never got them back. IDW has hardbacks of them, so I think I may need to snag those. Yeah, absolutely. I love. I've had these since about 2000. These first publications, probably 1998, actually, 97 or 98. I think that's when I scored those, and I got them for a steal back then. And just fell in love with them all over again. It was good to read big chunks of them instead of a panel here and an issue there. The hamsters were awesome. That's funny. I'll check out I think I do have one issue of those hamsters. I'll have to dig it out. Preteen, dirty genre, kung fu kangaroos. Anyone? Curtis Joyce is here. Hello, Curtis. I know him in real life. Scott Neely. Yeah, I could never find their comics except at comic book shops at the mall. We would never have had Power Rangers if it weren't for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Scott Neely, that is a whole other conversation. I'm not going to say you're wrong. But thanks to watching Ultraman and Space Giants on TBS in like 79, 80, 81, I felt like they never went away. You know what I mean? I don't know. But you're probably right. Who knows? Kid Ragnarok. TMT popularity definitely resulted in many ridiculous anthropomorphic small press comics. Interesting time period. Yes, it was interesting, fun, and interesting. I absolutely, even when you rolled your eyes at stuff, it was still in fun. I have a third print of number 1 or something. It was $4 at a comic show in Haines Mall, Winston-Salem, and I hated paying $4 for a comic at the time. Yeah, I feel you. I know where we're going with this. Yep, it was fun. That's right. Well, guys, that's the recommended reading. Okay, stayed on here. We got it done in an hour, which is fantastic because now I need to do the laundry and pack for my work trip and stuff, right? I got a few things in mind to do. Have no idea when I'll be able to do another live stream, but like this, share this, thumbs it up, let people subscribe, let people know we're here, get it out there. Scott Neely, I watched Ultraman in the 70s, but it died until MMPR. And then I actually watched Superhuman Samurais, which was modern Ultraman for the 90s. I liked Ultraman. I remember watching Ultraman on some Sunday mornings on some show that I got on antenna, some channel. Who knows where it came from? I dug Ultraman, but wait a minute. Spectre Man. Spectre Man is who I watched on TBS. Ultraman for me came after that. Spectre Man on TBS. I meant insisting time in a positive way, of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys, be excellent to each other. Thanks for hanging in there. And we will check everybody out later.